Hello everyone, this is Varun Aggarwal, editor at ETCIO, and I welcome you all to today's panel discussion brought to you by ETCIO in partnership with Cisco. Today we are talking about enhancing customer experience with full visibility of your IT stack. Now, over 75% of global IT leaders acknowledge that they are faced with more IT complexity than ever before, and they continue to wrestle with overwhelming data noise. Protecting your user base and brand reputation while attracting new customers means your technology teams must support an expanding application ecosystem while ensuring services set the standard for being fast, secure, reliable, and easy to use. It's therefore time to move beyond siloed domain monitoring and actually gain full control of your stack visibility, insights, and actions. Your digital business and customers really demand it. So, in today's panel discussion, our esteemed experts will really highlight the issues related to visibility and observability at different layers of an enterprise IT stack and what you and your organization can really do to regain control. So let me kickstart. Let me introduce you to our panelists today. So our first panelist is Ram Awasthi, who is the CTO at Ghana. Welcome, Ram.
Thanks, Varun, inviting in this very interesting session. And this is very hot and burning area where all the technology teams are putting a lot of effort.
So let me just introduce all our other panelists and then we can get into a discussion. So our next panelist is Rohit Tuteja, who's the head product growth and payments at Upgrad. Welcome, Rohit.
Thank you, Varun. Thanks for having me here and really looking forward to learning from the experts.
My pleasure. Our next panelist is Krishnenjit Roy, who's the Senior VP Technology at Bank Bazaar. Welcome, Krishnenjit.
Hi, Varun. Thanks for having me here. Welcome, everyone.
Great to have you, Krishnenjit. Our next speaker is Abhinav Gupta, who's the VP Engineering Head of Infra at Nisho. Welcome, Abhinav.
Thank you, Varun, for having me here and looking forward to having a great discussion with the panel.
Same here, Abhinav. Our next speaker is Dheeraj Kumar. He's the VP of Engineering at Urban Company. Welcome, Dheeraj.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me here, Varun. It will be a great session for sure.
Thanks. Next up, we have with us Navneetan M, who's the Senior VP CISO and Head IT at Grow. Hi, Navneetan.
Hey, Varun, and all very good evening, and thanks for having me here and looking forward to a wonderful conversation.
Pleasure. Last but not the least, we have with us Deepak Gupta, who is the Sales Leader for Digital Native Enterprises at Cisco Systems. Welcome, Deepak.
Hey, thank you, Varun. Hello, everybody. Looking forward to have a great chat with all of you.
Thanks, Deepak. Now, before we begin, let me just remind all the attendees that in case you have any questions for any of our speakers, do post in your questions in the Q&A windows. In case we don't have enough time to answer all the queries, we'll try and make sure we respond in line to all the questions. So let me just kickstart this conversation with Navneetan. And Navneetan, today's pace of business reality really requires agility, not just in decision making, but also in the company's IT infrastructure. Can you give some context of how you are really building your IT infrastructure with respect to this evolving business needs?
Awesome, Varun. Of course, this is a business question, but really it's a combination of both the business and the IT, right, which play a very significant role. So who will stand in the market as who has more agile in this respective process, right? Whether it is a business or it may be on the IT infrastructure, who can scale up and who can move forward, who can solve the end users' problems, who can stand in the market. So maybe if you see the current environment, who are all the unicorn, who are maybe in the fintech, maybe other industry, absolutely the agility is a key and fundamental the factor which play significant role and to be there in the market leader. So maybe business, if you see this, maybe we used to say in the different forums, always the business will have a different requirement irrespective of IT and then devs and then DevOps availability and then ability, but they wanted to be there in the the market leader. What are the business they are choosing? So that's why the agility play very significant role, irrespective of which are the things. It's maybe the business, IT, or in terms of in the overall of the development, the environment.
Thanks, Navneethan. Ram, coming to you, Navneethan raised an important point around agility, which is important for, I think, all the panelists here today. We are all in high growth business areas. So how are you really building your IT stack to make sure that, it's agile at the same time resilient?
Currently, businesses are very demanding, and you have very high competition, very cutting edge competition, all different competitors within the space. Everybody is working very fast. And second part is customers are also very demanding. So you need to move ahead very fast and implement things very fast, and also up to certain scale. So if we talk about Ghana, so whenever we launch any new service or any new feature, so immediately it goes, and for other unicorns also it goes up to certain scale. So you need to design for that scale, and then agility go to market is also very important. So we work on all different layers. So application layer till infra layer, everywhere we have different mechanisms to meet those demands. So DevOps plays very important role. And here we are very much focused on security also. So on every stage of the development, whether it is application or it is infrastructure, so we embed and follow DevSecOps processes. So create infrastructure that is also using all the significant technology methodologies and good frameworks and processes which can handle scale on demand. And design should be, so we design at least for the 5x and deploy for 2x.
That's great. I mean, you're actually building up for a very large scale. Let me actually get to Krishnenjit. Krishnenjit, this building for scale also, you have to keep in mind the complexity that comes with it, right? So when you're building for scale, you're also probably working on multiple stacks and trying to make sure that everything is scalable. How do you balance in terms of complexity of the environment?
See, generally what we do is, in order to build an IT infrastructure with respect to business needs, I have a methodology of going with a plan, build and run approach. Okay. So in the plan stage, you're responsible for collecting business requirements, performing demand management, and serving the overall interface with the business partners. So you are also responsible for developing and optimizing a set of reusable service offerings to be used for application developers. So this kind of involves understanding business requirements, defining service levels, and calculating product unit cost. It also kind of includes optimizing product economics over time. So hence you need to plan based on the product and architecture where to go for a cloud native architecture, or where you want to go for, like, say, an on-premise or a hybrid kind of model. Now comes the build stage. So in the build stage, you do technology design and configuration to kind of make service offerings. This includes investigating different vendors' offerings, selecting specific technology, performing integration required to make sure that they work kind of together, right? What functions you want to do yourself, what you want to outsource. The deployment team kind of determines how many servers that you need, how many gigabytes of storage that you need, what should be provisioned to support your business applications. And then comes the run stage. In the run stage, you kind of perform all operations and provide support to keep the technology environment operating and meeting service level expectation. So it usually includes several large components like service desk, DevOps, system engineering, and many more. So one thing to keep in mind, that stabilization and optimization is key. So any kind of automation that you could introduce to increase quality and reduce cost and build the foundation for a multi-speed operating model that supports a hybrid kind of infrastructure. That's what is the key, and that's how we kind of go.
No, interesting point, Krishnenjit, and I'll actually pull in Abhinav to also expand on this point. So, Abhinav, it's important to figure out, like Krishnenjit said, that how much of the IT you want to do internally, what you plan to do externally, and how do you bring it together. But at the same time, when you're adding new components and when you're working in a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud kind of an environment, how challenging is it to actually have the visibility of data and making sure that you have clear observability as well as visibility of every aspect of the IT?
Well, there is one old saying that if you can't see it, you cannot control it, right? So observability is basically all around visibility. So you need to have visibility until the network layer also, not just as application layer or not just as mobile application layer, right? So observability is very, very important on multiple facets. So it saves you money in the end, right? So when the moment you are able to see the performance of your application, the moment you are able to see and measure the performance of your network, your storage, your caching systems, databases, and so on, right? You will find a lot of bottlenecks that you will be able to solve it. Right, so into the cloud where you are right now. Then comes the question of moving to multi-cloud or running things in parallel into a hybrid environment. Once you have visibility into one type of environment, you apply the same visibility into second, and you solve a lot of complexity in the process, right? Multi-cloud environment is fairly complex, it's challenging, but the moment you have visibility into your system into one cloud, it becomes fairly simple to run things in parallel on the other cloud as well. So coming back to the observability point, why it saves money? Because it lets you improve your applications network and move forward, beat competition faster and so on.
Thanks, Abhinav. Dheeraj, what would be your approach towards solving this complexity in your organization?
I'm actually trying to create a layer on top of cloud itself, which is usually there are techs, maybe I'm sure that there is a buzzword called Kubernetes, which makes this abstraction layer slightly more easier to manage, which is, hey, you have infrastructure, but then you have a maybe operating system of the cloud, which where you actually manage this complexity, so that it's much more easier to, as Abhinav mentioned, that hey, we need to observe and having that kind of clarity in terms of observing your infrastructure. That kind of tech stack is super needed in terms of whenever you're actually moving to multi-cloud ecosystem.
Thanks, Dheeraj. Rohit, would you like to add some perspective here?
Absolutely. I think, while working on the complexities, one complexity level is just where the maturity of your organization is, whether you're working in a single environment structure or you are working in a distributed system environment. And then the layer of complexities which come in if you are serving multitude of countries. Ram talked about being available for 5x and handling a load of 2x. So when you go to a multi-country, multi-use cases environment sort of a thing, and for an organization like Upgrad, we started with a core of higher education online programs. It was a very, very one-dimensional, one kind of a structure and tech stack which could help us. But now with the mission expanding and the company growing up, there are inorganic growth which is coming in through different companies serving the same thing. So the challenge also is that eventually, how do you build a design which is scalable, where you don't know in the times of Porter, you used to have a 5-year strategy. Now the strategy changes every 6 months. So how do you have a modular system where you are able to support different use cases, something which is not foreseeable right now as well, and the sunk cost or the loss which you make by serving newer use cases which come up is the minimal. Earlier, just to put an analogy of if you were to build a bridge and there are no exits on the bridge, you can't just escape and you have to run and run through the whole bridge. But how can you make systems which are modular, which are easy to disintegrate and add more and more use cases on top of that? So it's the cost to the company and maintenance is as low as possible.
So that does sound like a Herculean task, especially given how the whole acquisition cycle is going these days. So many acquisitions happening every day, and it just adds to the existing layers of complexity. Deepak, you work with multiple clients, and I'm sure this must be a challenge that everyone talks about. How would you really suggest companies handle this level of complexity?
I think most of the points I think are already covered, but from my point of view, if you look at it, there are 3-4 key areas that I think all of us are talking about, right? One is agility, right? Everybody spoke about agility, new features, new rollouts, new versions, right? It has to be, the faster you are, the better you are in the marketplace, right? So agility is very, very important. The second area would be the customer experience, right? If a user doesn't like the experience with the first go, very hard to get him back again. Adds to your costs, adds to to the lost customer, lost revenue, right? The third being, I think, if you look at it, IT is treated as a cost center, not anymore, right? Just 5 years back, we used to treat IT as a cost center, not anymore, right? Because IT can, with the amount of data that, the practitioners are sitting at, what users are doing at a particular time, which features they're using, what they're buying, what they're not buying, all of that is actually can be monetized, right? All of that can be used into giving business a direction in terms of new features to be rolled out, new revenue streams to be tapped into, right? So all of those things IT can provide, right? All of you guys can do that to your business. I'm sure you're doing that in one way or the other. The other is the cost optimization. You need to run a tight ship, with everything happening, you still need to run a very, very tight ship, very, very cost optimized model that you need to have, right? And one last thing which I think nobody talks about, but still is very, very important, is to keep the lights on. The whole scalability, the availability, the security, the compliance, the regulations, right? All of those things we don't talk about too much, but all of those things are part of any operating model that you design, right? So that's what I hear all of our customers talk about, right? So I'll stop here and maybe we can open up for further discussion.
Sure. So I'll take this discussion back to Navneethan. So Navneethan, we've heard about different approaches towards IT and how everything is really important. But when you're actually building at large scale, you also end up sometimes creating data islands. And it's all the more challenging in today's time, given that we're dealing with complying with privacy laws in different countries, soon to be coming in India as well. So how do you make sure that there are no data islands and you can actually track even when you're growing rapidly?
Yeah, absolutely, Varun. It's a very tricky question. I think most of the organizations, going through this, this current scenario. See, most of the speakers, highlighted a couple of stuff, right? When we are connecting the hybrid cloud, the first and foremost things is complexity increased. That when complexity increase, the transparency will come down, right? I mean, where we don't have like who is accessing and what on there. So when we have a multi-cloud, one side is a complexity, one side is there is no transparency. But in the parallelly, nowadays, if most of the the network it's connected on the API. And the next one is it's a SaaS product, right? I mean, it's a lot of shared IT, and really IT folks, CIO, and then CISOs might not aware like who is connected where. If you ask them to draw the architecture diagram today, I mean, if you review in after a month, definitely there will be a huge change. If you take a 15 years back and 20 years back, and if you see the architecture diagram, it is a stable. There will be addition, deletion of one component, that's it. Now, definitely, maybe, I can go on and just another CEO, it's very challenging situations to accommodate this overall architectures, because the component is keep adding, as well as what, let us take us on today's own time, this is my architecture, but it may not be the same as at the ground reality. Because the developer, DevOps teams already, they have added something else also, right? Because it's a simple API. Because earlier we need a dedicated, this IPsec network or dedicated in terms of the, the internet connectivity to establish MPLS and all the things about. Now since absolutely the environment has changed, the transparency is it's gone down. I mean, definitely there will be island. I mean, it's not only in the data, in terms of operation itself, there is island. To get to know, I mean, Abhinav had mentioned, right? I mean, until unless you see this assets, really, you cannot, apply the control. Here, not only on the data, just I'm talking about the process itself, very difficult. If you have grown the organizations or it's a little bit bigger, really we're not sure, who's doing what at in the back end and then front end, and then what are the vendors are onboarding. And next point is, since you touched on the data points, earlier we had a vendor risk management. It's a separate the onboarding, because now the supply chain attack it's gone beyond that, right? I mean, really, now it's not only our organization. As a CISO, really we have to protect assets of, or maybe we have to ensure that who are all onboarding us or who are providing service to us also be in the safer side. So our extension is really increased. On top of this, a pandemic situation, it's not only on the vendor, really we have to look who are the employees connecting from their home network also, the well secured. So that's the way the process is, it's completely distributed and transparency is reduced, complexity is gone, the beyond that. So in this case, like the process also, a little bit higher, and then there is a lot of data lake, which is hidden, like how we are using as a dark web. And next important point is, it's very difficult. I mean, let us take a very simple point, just if we want to tell you, people will use the service accounts, right? I mean, most of the people will use the service accounts. The service accounts will pull the information from the, the specific vendor or maybe specific applications. So once the respective employees leave from the respective organization, how many of us really remove this respective account or change the password? It remains same. Service accounts, username, password remain same, maybe 2 years, 3 years before, whatever it is. So employee who are all left those organizations, unintentionally they put the code on the public repository. It's absolutely, it's a con. So that standpoint, maybe when we are connecting, really, CISO have, the multiple hands in terms of, the protecting as well as the, in terms of defending the respective organization's data, specifically on the, data island.
So you raised a very important point. Let's see what other panelists have to say about that, and how are they addressing this. So Krishnenjit, would you like to comment on Navneethan's point on creating these multiple data lakes of not just data but also processes?
Absolutely. So with IT infrastructure being distributed and growing rapidly, it's always a challenge to have visibility, right? So there's a very popular saying by one of the famous IT leaders. He says, in God we believe, for everything else show us data. Or, in a very famous Bollywood movie, Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise says, show me the money, right? So hence data analysis kind of becomes very important. How do we use the data to get visibility and make the right decision? So some of the points that we generally do here is consistently we keep track of the health and performance of our environment. We upgrade and maintain the monitoring system. This will help us kind of identify issue, attack faster, respond to attacks faster, proactively kind of respond to them. If we have data, learning the data, using them with machine learning will help us kind of automate and respond to a lot of incidents in a faster manner. We need to provide, monthly reports highlighting trends, issues, and capacity. Provide kind of detailed and actionable recommendations that will improve the, the experience of the user. Also, after getting this data, we need to meet very regularly to kind of discuss any kind of trends and improvement. So get, kind of overreaching visibility over your IT infrastructure, run reports, and kind of diagnose issues are, some of the points I would like to highlight.
So by getting that data, you mean being able to track every aspect of it and analyzing that?
Correct.
Excellent. Abhinav, coming to you, you talked about creating the right processes for visibility. Now, as you're expanding rapidly and you're probably acquiring companies and acquiring different stack of technologies, is there a method to the madness in terms of how do you decide what goes on private cloud, what goes on public cloud, and which public cloud is suitable for which kind of applications, to just simplify the process and make sure that you know where to find what? Is it practically possible to do that?
These days everyone goes to public cloud. When we talk about startups, we as Misho, we are still a startup, though we are a big company now, but we still work in startup mode, and VC funded startup tend to go to public clouds only. They kind of wait before they invest into their own data centers or their own private cloud and so on, right? But having said that, public clouds are costlier than building your own data centers or private cloud, right? So there's always this debate between build versus buy, right? So building your own things, building applications, building data centers, building private cloud versus hosting your applications on public cloud. So I would say the simple way forward is to go try out public cloud, then reach a stage where you can think about multi-cloud or hybrid cloud or a data center or a private cloud, right? First, trying out a public cloud is the right option. Another point I would like to add is I would suggest that you build applications in such a manner that they are cloud agnostic, right? They can run on private cloud or public cloud also, right? So for example, like we all talked about agility. So moving to Dockers, containers, and then Kubernetes is the way to go. And most of the clouds support that, right? So everyone is giving Kubernetes as a service. So this is one example. Like that, there are many. So SQL as a service is given by all the clouds these days. So you use SQLs and you use, basically cloud agnostic services or the services which are compatible between clouds, right? So that it is easier to run your applications on multi-cloud environments.
Thanks, Abhinav. That's a good perspective on selecting what cloud to go for. Dheeraj, coming to you, I mean, Abhinav raised a great point since most of the companies here started as startups and still work in the startup mode despite the scale. Public cloud becomes an important element in infrastructure. But is there a way to create process of at least choosing what cloud to go for?
Yeah, so Abhinav is right in a sense that de facto choice is obviously public cloud for most of the companies these days. Maybe my thumb rule, if you feel that, hey, your workload is going to be very static, which is be it day or be it in night, if your workload is more or less static, it's not like, hey, it's changing very often. The second thing is that, hey, you're not expecting maybe what sudden spike in terms of traffic. So when you say sudden spike, hey, some campaign will happen and your traffic will suddenly go 10x. Then obviously this sticking to maybe non-public cloud might be okay. But most of the companies these days are in that state which, hey, I would like to run marketing campaign which will increase my load by overnight or over month to 2x, 5x, 10x. And that's why this public cloud or the agility, I think we started with this point of IT being agile. I think cloud brought that real agility for the for the IT ecosystem for sure, right? So we can actually maybe get a server in less than 10 minutes, faster than maybe what we can get grocery right now. So public cloud is able to give us that agility, and that's what maybe it has become de facto choice. But on the other side, as Abhinav mentioned, this is costlier. Costlier if you don't tune or maybe you don't put a control on your cost. Okay, if you're not switching on your server, switching on server as in using code, if you're not scaling down that, hey, in the daytime it's 10 server and in nighttime it's only 2 server, then obviously public cloud bills going to be very, very off the roof. Okay. But if you are able to think from that angle from day one, usually public cloud will be much more effective than hosting your own infrastructure.
And Dheeraj, that's a great point. Ram, coming to you, it's quite apparent from other panels that public choice is not just about cost saving, and you end up spending more in case you don't plan it properly. I want to get into the part of security and visibility back again. We talked about creating data islands and the kind of security challenges that can also bring about, and also privacy. How would you just address those challenges?
Right. So, as we have discussed that as system scales, lot of services and independent services in distributed environment generate a lot of data. So data is one what users generate, and there is a lot of data in terms of logs. And I've seen a lot of incidences happening where sensitive information is getting into log, and then that log anyhow gets compromised, and a lot of user data gets. So the way we approach is we do the classification of the data and then continuously monitoring of different data assets, that if any such information is getting proliferated within the log systems, and if it is into certain data layers, so there are different zones or access classifications are there. Basis that we can control all the checks and data control mechanisms are put. And while designing any new application also, so we do very strict threat modeling and trust boundaries, definition of trust boundaries. So depending on that, we have a lot of visibility towards that, what sort of data is flowing and what is the trust boundary where we need to put checks and balances. So one is monitoring all the data that is flowing across, and then who has access to that data. And then sometimes we have, like we are talking about code. Code is also some sort of data, you can say. And sometimes on public repositories, accidentally developers share that data, and certain important critical keys are shared there, and miners are looking for these keys, and then the systems gets compromised. And this has happened for large corporates in past. So some sort of service which scan throughout the public world and try to find out any such signals. So we collect all those signals and then act upon very fast, so that it is secure, and users data is secure, and visibility what data is flowing where.
Thanks for that perspective, Ram. We are also joined with Nirmal NR right now. Welcome, Nirmal. So let me quickly introduce Nirmal. He's the ABS CEO for Zoomcar. So Nirmal, just to quickly bring you up to pace, we were talking about the kind of complexities in high growth environment today, and how that leads to challenges in terms of observability of data, creating different data islands. And Ram was talking about how that creates a lot of security issues and how those can be addressed. So quickly, if you can just comment on what is your perspective on handling such complexities.
Yeah, I'm really sorry upfront. I'm just apologizing for what happened. It's just that I ended up missing this for some reason, right? There was some tech issue, you wouldn't believe this, which led to something like this. I'm really sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, just going back to the topic, right? I'm glad to be on this panel with all of you. So in reality, for a business like ours, right, what actually happens is there's so much of data, especially customer data, that is flowing through the whole system, starting from something like a booking, so booking which starts and then the car getting picked up. There's so much of IoT data that comes up in terms of the car location, multiple things, eventually result in customer experience due to that, right? And there are so many systems which are speaking to each other, and processes which are essentially ensuring that happens, right? That is what the current condition is. And any of these failing results in a bad customer experience for us right now, right? And the amount of what we try right now, as you mentioned about the security of it, the amount of tools that we use currently to ensure that there is enough masking, because customer data is available. If we don't really use the right kind of tools and masking, in terms of people are getting only the right data that they need access to, right? That is a big security risk for us, to be honest. This is what we are currently working on. We have multiple tools. I mean, obviously, we do not develop everything on our own. We work with multiple vendors, starting with everything. So, for example, we are talking about everything being hosted on an AWS platform, but even on the customer experience side, we work with multiple vendors like a Freshdesk or the Dialer solutions, multiple solutions which kind of work with each other, all brought together by our IT backbone, the CRM system that has been developed. That is what we currently depend on.
Fair point. Let me just get some perspective from Rohit also. Rohit, Nirmal talked about his security challenges, and Ram also talked about how multiple issues can arise. One more point to add is, when you have multiple public clouds, there will be certain applications pulling data from one cloud and transferring to the other. So sometimes you may get into the challenge of visibility of data in transit. How would you really solve?
So I think I don't know if anyone has been able to crack this to the T, but the idea is that, as multiple speakers talk about, that how do you build processes where such islands are not created? And, we also got to acknowledge that the kind of systems we are working on, these are distributed systems and not all of them are proprietary systems. You depend on, leave aside multiple different clouds, but even when you're working with AWS and when AWS goes down, we have seen in the past how many services who dependent on them have gone down. Just the last week, I think both Swiggy and Zomato went down. Probably they were using the same service where both of them went down. It was like a hahacar on Twitter. So that's an acknowledgement we got to have. And as we evolve and build distributed systems, these are the areas where things will get evolved, and I think at this point we are probably at a position which is not that bad. Yes, you have one-off events which you got to live with, and thankfully with the engineering team supporting 24/7 and with all the tools etc. being available, we have cases where we can troubleshoot that and come back very quickly. The second thing which I wanted to touch upon is the fact that here we only talked about the data collection and data processing which we are doing internally. There's also that factor of compliance. The compliance puts so much of pressure on these data systems, and companies which are working in multi-country setup. When you talk about entering the EU region, GDPR is a big trouble for all engineering teams when we start off. And it's not only about receiving the data from your internal systems and applications, but when customers come back on their request, how do you really find and be able to delete all the data or have that available? And we have seen challenges where data, while whatever is in the system, irrespective, I think across experiences with multiple companies, irrespective how the companies have begun, but we still have data sitting on third-party tools like an Excel. How do you really ensure that those data islands are not built, and when you're processing, you have real control on them and able to handle that? So these are some of the challenges I think we need to figure it out. And an ever evolving problem of, now we've been in the Web 2.0 space, now more talks about Web 3. So complete change of technology, and then we have to learn from scratch again and then build on top of that.
I think to your point about two competitors going down together, that's an ideal situation in a way, because then you're not losing customers. The customer really has nowhere to go. But on a serious note, coming to Deepak, all our panelists talked about not being able to crack the code to an extent in terms of addressing this issue. How would you suggest, or are there any ways to fix this?
Yeah, I think everybody speaking about the issues, I think the answers lie somewhere there only, right? I think everybody is aware of not having silos, right? Because the complexity is so much today that you have multiple interdependencies, multiple clouds, multiple sets of data, multiple providers, right? And there are bound to be blind spots, right? And I've seen organizations where, even when they move to cloud, they move a particular aspect, as somebody was speaking about, a particular aspect to the cloud, and then they work on it as if it's an on-prem thing, right? So it's a separate silo which is created within the organization, right? So the idea is, try and work around, a single unified architecture, so to speak, and there are solutions available, right, which can give you a complete deep visibility across your applications, across your infrastructure, across your clouds, right? A single pane view, give your teams a shared context, right? I mean, if you're going to manage the server team, we're going to manage servers, and application teams are going to manage applications, and AWS is going to manage AWS, and Google is going to do that, right? So I think it is what we have then possibly done is then just taken the on-prem world to the cloud world, and then the same problems are bound to happen again, right? So what we need is a unified architecture, a unified way of doing things, right? And the more we think in terms of policies, simple things like connecting to AWS and Google and Azure, right? All of those things, the simple connection to those clouds, they keep changing, right? First of all, they're all separate, right? Then they keep changing. These guys will bring in new ways of doing it, right? So unless you have a single policy framework, unless you have a single view of your entire architecture, I think there are bound to be issues. And I think that the whole idea is to be working towards that goal. Howsoever tough that may be, I know it is not easy, but yeah, that's the idea that we should all pursue.
Does anyone have a comment to make on that before we move to the next question?
Yeah, so this is really very challenging when systems are talking across. So in our case, we have a hybrid model, a lot of bigger infrastructure within the private cloud, and then certain spiky infrastructure or services like make and shift kind of arrangement. So that is running out of public cloud. So we implemented some sort of micro segmentation layer in between. So which has policies defined, and it keeps on monitoring what sort of connectivity is happening between different parts of the infrastructure, and whether it is violating certain policies, and then quickly it alerts. So that sometimes helps, gives better visibility what is happening.
Thanks, Ram. Now, Nitin, you had something to say?
Yeah, so in addition to Deepak and Ram comment, maybe on the ground reality is understanding the responsibility, right? In terms of cloud, maybe let us take you are taking the public cloud itself. What kind of services you are receiving is a matter, whether it is IaaS, PaaS, or other couple of services. So what we have it. Each services have its unique shared responsibility. We cannot say that SaaS may not be the same as PaaS and the IaaS, right? It is absolutely different. So the understanding of the responsibility, what I hold up, because if you take a SaaS, you have a very limitations, very simple. You have a very limitations in terms of integrations of logs also. It's not so easy fetch all the logs. It's based on the contract what you had with the SaaS provider. If any incident happened with the SaaS product, it's a little bit challenge unless you have the good contract. So that's why the shared responsibility, understanding the responsibility play a very significant role in the hybrid cloud, and holding that the data leakage, or maybe have a complete control on the governance standpoint. That play a very significant role. And the next one is in terms of misconfigurations. If you see this, all the latest incident, whatever it has happened, it may not be the same like whatever. Of course, its a name remains same. But however, it may not be the same as in other standpoint. So whatever it is happening in the different cloud service provider, it's absolutely different than what we think actually. So in terms of responsibility and configuration, very significant role.
So my question is, when you're really trying to transform IT from being a cost center to a profit center, does this whole aspect of visibility and observability also play a role, because that can also give you some sense of where you can be instead of where you are?
Yeah, maybe I'll start on that. Few stuff, right? I mean, if you take it 10 to 20 years back, IT is a cost center. I mean, because the business was running on different aspects, right? It's not purely on the IT. IT is just, it's like I can say, it's an enabler or maybe the cost center. Now the entire business scaling up, or maybe the technology is the one converting is of the business, right? Maybe whatever you take it as, it's maybe the the recent payment industry or the fintech industry, or it's maybe on the e-commerce, right? Absolutely, technology is the one connecting all the dots and solving the end users' problems. So it's really gone. I mean, now no more, it is a cost center. Maybe from our perspective, they are a complete enabler. That in terms of people, process, technology. In fact, the governance anywhere it is missing also, which leads a major the business impact, and it disrupts the overall the operations across the organizations. What do you run?
Thanks, Namnitan. Nirmal, you run your own business. I mean, you're the only business guy on the panel right now. So, how would you see using this IT into really turning into a profit center?
So there is just no doubt whether IT or rather the tech part of it, right? That's the most critical piece for any of the people sitting out here. Like I know I'm the only business guy out there, but all of these are complete tech businesses that we are talking about, right? So I can't even imagine running what we run currently without the backbone of the technology that we currently have, right? It's just impossible. So I don't think there is a way of looking at it as a cost center at all. The other part is just think of any operation, right? Currently, just think of it from a perspective of customer experience. Anything that we run or on ground or the IoT that we have on our cars, none of that. If we did not have that technology, there is just no way to operate this business at all. Right? I don't think there's a way to think of this as a cost by any chance. The only thing that we can, I'm sure in our budget meetings, we'll be talking about AWS costs and different things like that. But in reality, think of replacing that with something else, possibly people, right? It's just impossible to run. These businesses will not exist. So I don't think that that approach of thinking of technology as a cost is relevant anymore at all. It's like a completely. So I come from a very brick and mortar kind of a business. Earlier, I used to work with. So at my time, I used to work with Ashok Leyland and with even with DuPont and all that. Those were more brick and mortar selling products kind of business, right? We are not in that world anymore. Even those industries have moved completely into a model where everything is sold as a service. So the modern service industry will not exist if there is no technology like this that we're talking. Right. So I don't think anybody from business, any sane person from business would think of technology as a cost. I really think that technology enables so much that it makes business possible, and it makes businesses a lot more profitable. Even on services business, right? You'll see the same thing happening. There are some companies which throw people at problems, and some companies which create products and tech to solve problems. And you'll always see that the only part which is scalable is the ones which does products and tech. And when you scale, you'll always see, because I've seen that it's not that everything starts with the tech and product, right? We start things with people. You see that it scales to some extent, and then you see everything falling apart, right? By the time you don't put your product and technology in place, everything falls apart, which is exactly the answer to all these questions that we have, right? The only way to scale things is through product and tech. No point in thinking of them ever as a cost center. I don't think that'll ever work, for at least for the new modern businesses.
Instead of just thinking of IT as profit center or a cost center, going back to the original topic of the discussion around visibility in the IT stack, does visibility and observability really help create more business value?
Yeah, visibility and observability is very important. And if we, so again, using the term customer experience. So customer experience is the utmost thing which every business wants to achieve. And we solve problems to give customer very elated experience. And there are multiple aspects to that. Whether your product is designed in such a way that gives that experience, and especially coming back to IT infrastructure. And so if response when customer is interacting with your solution or service, what sort of the response he is getting? If that response is not great, then obviously that experience is going to hamper. And then second one is obviously trust, that whatever interaction customer is doing, so he should have trust that it is secured enough and it will protect whatever transaction he or she is doing. So performance and availability and security, these three things are very important from customer standpoint. And for that, you need to have very great observability and visibility what is happening on the back end. So you should have all the data points so that you can predict or take any corrective measures before any issue or problem happens. So a lot of data should be gathered and observed, and then it's also important that that should be collated. So one is data specific to infrastructure, that how CPU is performing, memory is performing, network bandwidth is doing, and all those things. And second one is sometimes everything is fine, but there is some problem on the application or software layer. So how there are certain patterns like how many transactions are happening, or so user data. So by combining user data signals and infra signals, then we can will be very proactive to identify that certain problem has started. So we can take very quickly corrective measures before it impacts the customer's experience. And same goes for the security part as well, that if any bad actor is trying to do something with your system and get access to customers' data. So these data signals should be observed very minutely and in very fine-grained manner, so that you can figure it out that something is happening. So it's very important.
Thanks, Ram. Deepak,
Varun, if you allow, I would want to go back on that point of cost center and profit center. While as a common consensus, we kind of agree that
technology is going to be a profit center, but how do different experts really do the attribution? While creating a roadmap and talking to my technology counterparts, and then presenting it to the business, always the question is that, typically, if you think about how that business mind or a human mind works on ROI, is that if you put 100 salespeople on a particular selling point and you're able to, if you're paying a salary of, let's say, X lakh rupees to a person and they're generating revenues of 50 lakh rupees, then there is a multiple of X as an ROI which you're getting. While technology is a different beast altogether. If we talk about, Dheeraj's organization, an urban company now, when the investment in tech has happened, we've created the infrastructure. Launching a new category does not necessarily involve, more investments. But how do really different companies are doing that attribution and really go with a very bold stance and say that this is an investment which has actually brought in dollars, and it is not just a feeling that technology is a profit center?
I think that's an important element, and I was giving to Deepak just for that.
Yeah, so I will. Sorry. Yeah, Varun, this is Deepak here. I would just want to weigh in on that. I think that's an excellent point that Rohit makes. I think, when we talk about the visibility and observability, the answer lies there actually, right? When you give the business leaders the entire visibility around what exactly is happening in your system, okay, and then you tie it up with business impact, tie it up with the business KRAs that you are trying to drive, right? Your CEO or your CFO is trying to drive. That correlation, if you can establish, right, that will provide all the answers that Rohit is speaking about, right? So, for example, if you, App Dynamics, I think, is a pretty popular tool, right? We all know that. It has that business correlation, right? Everything that your application is trying to do and correlated with the business imperatives, right? That is one way in which you can get the answers. The other way is, if you look at it, if for all the digital native enterprises today, if there is anything, if we make a balance sheet, right, the balance sheet has to be intellectual property, the balance sheet has to be trust, right? All of those are the assets that you have, right? And they are digital in nature, right? And if they are digital in nature, they are up for nuisance in this crazy world that we are living in. So security, as Ram mentioned, is also a very, very critical component. And I don't think any boardroom does not have that discussion these days. CEO is worried about it. Earlier, CIO was worried. Then later CFO got worried, and now the CEO is worried. If you ask them what gives you sleepless nights, I am sure 10 out of 10 CEOs are going to tell you that nothing should happen with my system. I should be safe and secure. And security, right? That is something that drives business results, right? That is like the heart of the organization. If security goes, the trust goes, the business goes, right? The reputation goes, right? So security, right? Conversations around how a particular security stack, as simple a technology as, giving access to applications to the users, right? Whether it is a consistent policy that you have or whether it is broken. People can come from VPN, people can come from proxy, and people can also come from, an OTP-based thing, right? These are different systems, but they are blind spots if you don't have a unified policy. And if you go and have a conversation with the CEO that this is a blind spot that we are running, there is no unified policy. We need to have a unified policy on network or application access, right? I mean, that I'm sure a CEO will listen to it, right? And if you put data around it, right? So the answers lie in the questions that we ask, and that would be my 2 cents on it.
Thanks, Deepak. Would love to weigh in more on this. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. But thank you everyone for sharing your candid inputs and having this really engaging conversation here. Thanks for coming in and having this chat. Looking forward for more such chats in the future. Thank you so much.